Talks. And today we are going to talk about Azure well-architected framework security pillar. And this is the next video in the series that we are trying to cover. And we are going to dig deep to understand each and every design principle, aspect, and scenarios, or with lots of example, of course, and various resources and services that could help us to achieve security for our architecture, of course. So let's start with the simple thing. I'm pretty sure you guys are already aware of these, which we have already covered, but we have to, in order to create a complete AWAF security video, and it's CIA. Yes, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is the actually the goal for any security approach. So let's understand this in a very brief and quick manner, and then we'll keep going with zero trust and design principles for our well architected framework. So confidentiality, the very simple explanation would be keeping data private and accessible only to those who are authorized. You must have seen movies where there are files which is written confidential, right? So only the authorized folks should have the access. Confidentiality. We can take this example. Let's imagine you have a sensitive customer data stored in Azure SQL database. To maintain confidentiality, you could use Azure Active Directory for authentication and implement RBAC to ensure that only authorized employees can access the data. Additionally, you would also use built-in encryption to protect the data at rest and in transit, ensuring that even if someone intercepts it, they can't read it. Maintain the confidentiality. Then the second one is integrity. It is exactly what it is, the English word that means integrity of the data here, ensuring that the data is accurate and unaltered, which is like the people who has the access will not manipulate or alter the data, or rather, if somebody break into it, cannot change it because the authorized person wouldn't do it, right? Hopefully. Anyways, let's take the example to understand it. Suppose you are running a financial application on Azure. To maintain the integrity of your financial records, you would use Azure Blob Storage with immutable storage policies. This means once the data is written, it can't be changed or deleted, ensuring its accuracy over time. So you're trying to maintain the integrity. Or for the application code, you might use Azure DevOps with a strict version control and approval process to ensure that no unauthorized changes are made to the software. And finally, the availability. It simply means it should be available for the people who has the access to. Okay, so ensuring that the data and services are available to users who has the access for that service or resource when they need it. Uh, I don't think we need any example to understand it. It makes pretty obvious. So these are the things that we try to achieve with all the security approaches. Most of the things would be covered in CIA. So let's try to understand the approach, which is now all over the places. That's not the right word, which is everybody is talking zero trust approach. Prior to that, everybody was talking defense in depth, which is again, if you go and understand it, it is a part of zero trust now. Anyway, so let's understand the zero trust, and then we'll try to relate it with the CIA as well. So these are the three principles of zero trust. check carefully to make sure only the right people are doing what they are supposed to do. Sounds familiar in the previous slide. From where they should be doing it, because people can access the application or the resources from anywhere in the world with any device. So we have to keep that in consideration. This step makes it harder for hackers to pretend to be legitimate users because that's what they do. And what you gotta do, you need to verify explicitly with all the data points you have so that you can compare the device they're accessing, the place they're accessing, and how they're accessing. Even simple MFA can protect you from 99% of these kind of identity related threats. It's not what I'm saying, it's what the MS says. Could be the sales pitch, but it helps, right? So give people the least amount of access they need for only as long as they need it to the things they really need to access. This approach stops hackers from using permissions they shouldn't have. We call it least privilege principle. It saves you from human errors as well. Okay, then always assume your security could be breached or compromised, and you should have backup plans that reduce the risk, because if somebody is in, he gonna damage the things if your main defenses fails, of course. So this way you're always one step ahead of hackers because you're thinking that way. If somebody gets in, what's he gonna do? You're going to protect your most important things and put controls in place to limit the exposure blast radius. So this is very simple three principle of zero trust. We have covered it in huge detail. If you go and check the playlist of zero trust, it would be under SC100, I guess, in this channel. So security isn't just a one-off task. Keep updating and improving your defenses and knowledge to protect your workload against ever-evolving hacker attacks. Now, the point I'm trying to make here, because this is the start, so hence I have to give the overview of security goals and the approaches. So let's relate these with the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Though it's pretty obvious the way I explained it, because in zero trust, access to data and resources is granted on a strictly need-to-know basis, which aligns with maintaining confidentiality by verifying and authenticating all users and devices before granting access. And zero trust ensures that sensitive data is only accessible to authorized users. That's how you're maintaining the confidentiality. And zero trust frameworks often include continuous monitoring and validation to ensure the data integrity. This means regularly checking that data and system configuration haven't been tampered, and thus aligning with the integrity aspect of CIA triad. And of course, zero trust architectures are designed to ensure that systems and data are always accessible to legitimate users, aligning with the availability principle. This is achieved through robust identity and access management system, ensuring that users can access what they need when they need it and for how long they need it without unnecessary barriers, because you got to run the business. The first priority is business, right? So I hope this slide 1 and slide 2 is tight now. Both are connected. We are good to go. And now it's time to understand the design principle. And that's why, because of this color, you can easily understand why I was talking about these two things, because this is what we are after for well-architected framework security. And these are the principles that Azure AWF provide us. And these principle covers these things because we got a design for CIA. And these are the continuous evolving security readiness, which is the quite basic and foundation. So let's start with design principle number 1, plan for security readiness. And I have certain points, the key points to achieve this, along with some examples. So here we are, plan for security readiness. The very first thing is what it is. Well, as the principle says, we should have a plan. Plan for what? Plan for the readiness of the security. That we are prepared, we are ready, we got a plan. We need to develop a comprehensive plan to protect our workload and organizational assets, aligning with business priorities and shared responsibilities, because that's how cloud works. And the very first one is the segmentation strategy. What are we doing with this? Well, we are trying to divide our workload, maybe on the basis of environment, maybe on the basis of network, or maybe on the basis of the folders like subscriptions. So you got to divide your workload environment into distinct segments based on business needs and sensitivity levels. It helps in defining clear access roles and responsibilities, reducing the risk of unauthorized access and limiting exposure of sensitive data. This will help to be aligned with the CIA triad, confidentiality, as segregation will only allow the relevant people to have the access. Only authorized users can access, so integrity will remain intact and data will be available to the right people to work with. So that's why we need to segment. It can also help us in management. We should have admins for different environments, or it could also directly connect with the your uh, operating model as well, right? So you should have that segmentation strategy. It will also give you accountability and ease to management, which is ultimately support in security as well. You could use subscription for the segmentation, resource group, virtual network, network security groups, anything which aligns with your operating model. So yeah, that could be your plan, the plan, first plan for the readiness. Continuous skill development. We all understand the value of this. We all belong to the latest technology and we know how technology are changing, how fast it's changing. So we should have plan for the skill development, provide some trainings in place, role specific security trainings, maybe put some sessions through Microsoft, because we know the cloud providers can do that for their partners. This ensures your team is equipped to design, implement, and manage effective security controls, staying ahead of potential threats. Maybe you are utilizing the old stuff and new is in the market and you're not even aware of that. For example, I had this situation in past between service endpoint and private endpoint. When there were no policies around for the service endpoint and people were still using because they weren't updated, aware about the new stuff. So anyways, I'm just trying to make a point. So continuous skill development is something you gotta have plan for. You can leverage Azure training resources or channels like this one or others or Microsoft channels for training. There's so many resources around free of cost, and I know most of the organization, the reputed one, the good one, provide the Udemy licenses for their team or LinkedIn Learning. So you should have something uh, planned for the skill development, which is crucial, most important, right? Because things are changing very fast. And then you should have plan for the incident response. You should establish a clear plan for handling security incidents, guided by industry best practices. Not like that. You should have things in place, SOPs in place, proper ways of dealing with such situations, automations through Azure Sentinel. Prepare your organization to efficiently manage and mitigate security incident, minimizing uh, confusion and response time during crisis. Yes, because if you don't have proper planning and if something happens, it would be havoc. And how how long you will take to fix it, it decides how much you are affected by it. So you could utilize Azure Sentinel for incident response as well with the predefined incident response plans within Sentinel, which can automatically respond to common security threats. And when we run some workload, most of them uh, must have some or should have some kind of compliance adherence. So you got to understand and comply with external security requirements such as regulatory standards and organizational policies. And you could easily achieve that with the help of Azure Policies and Azure Compliance Manager. This compliance adherence ensures your workload remains compliant, avoiding penalties and instilling confidence in users and stakeholders, which is very, very important for your business. So you have to think from all the perspective, not just the workload, from the business perspective as well. And these compliance actually making your workload more secure because they have their own standards to maintain. They need to enforce team level security standards, implement consistent security practices across your team and workload operations, something like implement Azure DevOps practices and Microsoft Defender recommendations. So, this reduces the likelihood of errors and security breaches, leading to a more predictable and secure operational environment. And if you have, because SOC is something not everyone needs, as per my experience, but it is important, especially for the organization which are running highly sensitive workloads. So you must have something something like SOC in place, or integrate your incident response activities with your organization's SOC or maybe third party. Anyways, the one who are aware how to get through those security incident as soon as possible, what is the right way to approach it. And they also do proactive hunting, so many things. We have already covered SOC in previous videos. You can check SC100 series, you'll find there as well. Anyways, because here we are talking from the architecture and design perspective. So if this is there, if SOC is there, because you have to, that kind of workload you're running, you must have some kind of integration with your incident response so that your SOC team is also aware if there is any security related incident. Uh, and this SOC leverages specialized expertise for real-time threat detection and rapid response, enhancing overall security effectiveness. The time if somebody enters, hopefully it will not because you have well-planned security in place. If enters, SOC knows how to get it out and close the door. All right, so this is all about the readiness. You're ready now. These are the plan to make your readiness. Now it's time for design to protect confidentiality. So, how can you protect the confidentiality? Well, it is all about one should have the one who should have the access to read those documents. Only that should have the access. I hope it makes sense. Anyways, so what you're gonna do? Restrict the access. Only allow access to information on a strict need to know basis. This minimizes the risk of unauthorized access and activities. You should use Azure Active Directory for identity management and implement RBAC as per least privilege principle. You could set up Azure AD groups for different departments, granting them access only to the resources they need. For instance, the finance team only has access to financial data and application, not to the other resources, or maybe the development resources, or maybe marketing data, things like that. All right, then you have data. What about data? You should classify the data. Only then you should have the, only then you can come up with some strategy to protect it. So determine how sensitive each type of data is and protect it accordingly. This helps in applying the right level of security to different kinds of data, because even applying security to different kind of data is something. Some other pillars of architecture involved, like cost, like management, right? So utilize Azure Information Protection, which is purview now to classify and label data based on sensitivity. We can label documents containing sensitive personal data as confidential and use Azure policies to control who can access these documents and how they can be shared. So Azure provides all those things for you, and then you should encrypt data. Use encryption for data, whether it is stored, being sent, or processed. This means even if someone unauthorized gets to the data, they can't understand it. And you should use Key Vault for encryption key management and apply encryption to data at rest with, if it's storage, then SSE, or if it's SQL, then it's TED, and in transit through TLS, SSL. In process for SQL, we have always encrypted. So there are many ways, but you need to understand, if you're designing in such a way that highly sensitive data should be encrypted at rest, while moving, while in use. You need to prevent exploits. Regularly update and secure your systems to close off any weak spots that hackers could exploit. And it is that, why regular? Because maybe today you don't have any weak spot, but tomorrow you have. Remember, even Microsoft keep on updating or sending patches every second Tuesday. Why? Because things are changing. We can use MS Defender, which can enhance security posture by continuously scanning your environment, automatically applying security recommendation and patches to the resources, if you allow automatically, or maybe you could do it yourself. It depends the kind of operations you have put in place. You should have a control on the data flow. It's very important. Keep an eye on how data moves through your system and apply the same level of security throughout to avoid any weak links. Implement network security groups and Azure Firewall to control data traffic flow within Azure. And of course, you should have all the records for every click you do on your workloads, on your environment. Maintain detailed logs of who accessed what data and when, which is usual for both detecting and handling security incidents. You can set up Azure Log Analytics to collect and analyze logs from all their Azure resources. They monitor for unusual access patterns and audit data access for compliance. And that's how your Sentinel also works, which is your SIEM and the SOAR solution. So you should have an robust logging in place. So that's how you can maintain the confidentiality, or design to protect the confidentiality with all these things in mind. Now we need to design to protect the integrity. We need to ensure the system and its data are accurate and protected from unauthorized changes, preventing disruptions in operations and maintaining trust in the system's reliability. So just like the confidentiality, again, somebody can ruin the integrity if they have the access. So you got to have a strong access control, a robust authentication authorization system in place. Well, we're talking about Azure, then of course Azure Active Directory can help you build that, and utilize RBAC solutions through PIM, privileged identity management, with just-in-time and just-in administration. By controlling who can access and modify the system, you reduce the risk of unauthorized changes, ensuring data remains consistent and trustworthy, maintaining the integrity. Then you should have vulnerability protection. Regularly check for and fix vulnerabilities in your software and its dependencies. Staying ahead of potential weakness means you can prevent attackers from introducing faults into your system, maintaining its integrity. You must have heard about the 0-day exploit or vulnerability. If there is a vulnerability in, for example, Java, if you heard a couple of years back, there was some vulnerability. If you're not fixing it in your system and hackers are aware of that, he can easily get into your system. So you need to be stay ahead of potential weaknesses. Use MS Defender to continuously scan Azure environment for vulnerabilities and employ Azure DevOps pipelines to automatically scan for vulnerabilities in their code before deployment. DevSecOps, cryptography and code signing. Use encryption and digital signatures to protect data and confirm its source. This ensures that any modification are authorized and verified and protects data from being intercepted and altered by unauthorized parties. Use Azure Key Vault for managing cryptographic keys and implementing code signing certificates. Make sure your backup data is unchangeable and encrypted too. This guarantees that your backup data remains intact and secure, allowing for reliable data recovery if needed. Use Azure Backup with encryption and Azure Blob Storage with immutable storage policies. It will help you to maintain the integrity. Then finally, set up safeguards to ensure the system operates within its intended limits. This prevents misuse or unintended use of your system, reducing the risk of corruption or tampering. Implement Azure policies to enforce organizational standards and assess compliance. So these are different approaches which will help you to design your solution for integrity. Now it's time to design for availability. Just like confidentiality and integrity, you should have a robust identity access. Because in cloud, I have said it 1,000 times in previous videos as well. I would like to say it again because I want everyone to know uh, security is new. Identity is the new security boundary, not the physical network anymore. Though that is also important, but security is something that we need to focus because people are not only accessing from the physical boundary, but anywhere in the world with any device in the world. That's why identity is something which is very important when cloud is in the picture. So prevent misuse of access by compromised identities and hence implement least privileged access with just in time and just enough access principles. Reduce the risk of crucial resources being unauthorizedly modified or detected, enhancing system protection without hindering legitimate access. You do have all these tools in hand through Azure Active Directory. You may need a P1 or P2 license, but yes, you do have the tools. You need not to discover one or deploy one or rely on third party. Use security measures to guard against attacks that could lead to system overload or access blockages. Protect against system downtimes caused by malicious activities like DDoS attacks, ensuring continuous operation. Implement Azure DDoS protection and Azure Application Gateway with Web Application Firewall to protect against common web vulnerabilities, which will give you robust security controls. Um, these are just few examples. You can have many more things we might cover in upcoming video as well uh, through the checklist. Anyways, the third point is preventive measures. Regularly update and patch systems. Use code scanners and effective anti-malware. Things are repeating here, but yes, these all are interrelated, overlapping, and it is good if it is repeating. It is going into our thick head, not yours, but mine. So regularly update and patch systems. Reduces the likelihood of attacks, exploiting system vulnerabilities, maintaining operational continuity. Regularly update systems using Azure Update Management and scan for vulnerabilities with MS Defender. You should focus on critical components. You should know first what is the critical components, just like we should know first what data we have. Similarly, regularly assess and prioritize security for the systems which are most critical. and focus security efforts where they are most needed, preventing significant threats and minimizing potential damage. Somebody is getting into your some website which nobody access and it's dev maybe, though I would not say that somebody will. If somebody, it's compared to your production mission critical finance related applications, so you can understand we should have that segmentation in place. Resilient recovery planning. That's the last point for the availability. We should apply rigorous security measures to both primary and the recovery environments, ensure frequent and secure backups, ensures the ability to quickly recover to a secure state following an incident, preventing prolonged system outages, implement ASR maybe or Azure backups for backups and ASR for DR, and that could help us achieve a good resilient and recovering plan, BCDR. All right, so the last one is sustain and evolve the security posture. I'm pretty sure with security posture, because I hope you guys are following my videos, so you must be getting the same idea that I am getting right now, MS Defender. So continuously improve and adapt your security measures to handle new threats and vulnerability effectively. Sustain and evolve. Okay. So keep an updated record of all your resources, including their details and dependencies. Comprehensive asset inventory. It helps in understanding the environment thoroughly, aiding in quick response during and after security incidents. You can utilize Azure Resource Manager to maintain the inventory for your Azure resources, of course. Uh, and you should have the information of all the dependencies along with that and configurations. These things handy always help, and if you have that information, it will help you to design with security in mind, because once you know how things are hooked up, connected, and what all different resources you're using. For example, if you have an internal application, you would have a different security approach as compared to you have a publicly exposed application. So regular threat modeling, consistently analyze potential threats and vulnerabilities to your system. Keep on doing it. It's not a one-time day or one time thing. By knowing possible attack vectors, you can set up effective countermeasures in advance. You should use MS Defender to continuously uh, upgrade your security score. Then consistent security evolution. That's the third point. We should regularly compare our current security state against the established baselines and standards. Again, MS Defender will help us here. Uh, there are so many standards available that you could utilize with the help of Azure policies. Like by default, I think it's benchmark, MIS benchmark that Microsoft utilizes and give you recommendations only. So you could utilize as per your standards and your baselines, and you could also add more policies in it. Then we should have testing, which is absolutely very important. We might think we have placed some firewall or NSG in place, but if it is not configured correctly, we are vulnerable. So conduct periodic security testing like penetration testing and integrate vulnerability scanning in your processes in your software development lifecycle. These tests validate your defenses against real world attack scenarios and help in early detection of vulnerabilities. So as soon as you know, as soon as you can fix, and less opportunity to destroy your environment or your image. So efficient incident response. Develop swift and effective methods to detect, respond to, and recover from security incidents. Quick reaction times minimize damages and restore security quickly after an attack. You must set up the Azure Sentinel for security information and event management. It's your SIEM and SOAR solution. Uh, then we should have something in place which is called post-incident analysis to learn. Continuous learning is always the part of any IT environment or any engineer or architect who wants to grow? Well, after an incident, conduct thorough analysis to understand its impact and causes. It provides insights for improving defenses and operations, preventing future breaches, and whatever is the weak link, we can fix it. We should use Azure Monitor and Log Analytics for details, for our learning, for understanding what is happening, how it is happening. And you should stay updated. This point is coming again, and we already know why and how. And use automation in place. Staying current with updates and using automation reduces the chances of errors and keeps your defenses strong against evolving threats. So, with this, we can have this principle covered with these things. So, it's time to understand the checklist because we understand all these design principles. We understand different ways or approaches to achieve that in our architecture, in our design. What all is as per the business requirement, as per the workload requirement, internal and external, because you're not going to implement everything. This will help you to understand and apply which is needed because it's a trade-off, always remember. So we are going to talk about the checklist. Once you have your design in place, you should have something which can guide you what you have not. Checklist, simple enough. So I've prepared this checklist, not literally, but I took help from MS Learn, of course. But it helps. It really helps. So once you have your design in place, you can simply go and check, do you have any security baseline in place, which decide on the basic security standards you want to meet. Like I was explaining, MS Defender uses benchmark that by default. Then if you have, then check that box. If you don't, then you should prepare for this. It is something which is, I would say, must do. Then secure, you got a secure development life cycle. So what are you going to see? You should make sure your software is built securely from the start. You should have those tests, those security related components in your build. You use Azure DevOps to manage how software is returned and updated, ensuring each change is safe and secure. You should decide how sensitive your data is. You should know your data, and then you classify. Label your data based on how confidential it is. Use Microsoft Purview. You have all the tools handy. Utilize them. If you have nothing for your data, maybe you don't need it. But if you have such compliance or workloads or environment, then check that box and plan for it. Then divide your network into secure areas. The segmentation we talked about at the beginning. Create separate zones in your network for different tasks. It will also help in blast radius. Use Azure NSGs to create these zones, like having different rooms in an office for different teams, or use subscriptions, resource groups. It helps. So if you have something in place, then check that box. If don't, then please plan for something like this. Then control who can access what. You should have IAM is something which is very important. Your least privileged principal, your RBAC, is very, very important. Make sure only the right people can access certain information. Set up Azure Active Directory to manage who can get into different parts of your systems. And you should know what is coming in and what is coming out, your incoming and outgoing traffic. You should control that. Check and control the data coming in and going out of your network. Use firewall to monitor internet traffic, or Azure Firewall Premium one, which gives you all those features, advanced features. Keep your data secret. If you have something, check that box. Simple explanation. Encrypt or scramble your data so only authorized people can read it. Use Azure Key Vault to encrypt your data. And make sure your system is hardened every month if these are the VMs. Strengthen your system against attacks. Regularly updates your Azure systems and close unnecessary ports like reinforcing doors and windows in a house. Safeguard important software secrets. Protect important passwords and codes your software uses. Keep these secrets in Azure Key Vault and change them often like a bank changing the combination to its vault. And make sure you do not have these kind of information in your code. Watch for security threats. Holistic monitoring strategy is something can help you here. Keep an eye out for potential security problems. Use Azure Sentinel to monitor for suspicious activity like a security camera system. You should regularly check for weaknesses. Test your system often to find and fix the weaknesses. MS Defender is something great tool for this. Azure DevOps can also help here. Then you should have a plan for security problems, your incident response. Or if you have SOC, then you should have an integration with the SOC as well. So these are the checklist, which will summarize all the things that we have learned. Once you design everything on the basis of these principles that we have been through, we learned. And then at the end, once your design is ready, simply go through this checklist just to see if everything is covered. We are at the end, almost end. And in the end, we have some Azure services for our security. So let's starting from identity. For identity, Azure provides Azure Active Directory, and we can manage user identities and access to environment, data, and application. We can implement MFA, SSO, RBAC, privileged identity, identity protection, just in time, so many things. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool which thousands of features. You must utilize it. For network, we have Azure Firewall, Premium and Standard, use as per your need. We have Azure DDoS protection, basic is always on, but if you need, you should also go for the standard. We have NSGs, the basic firewall network routing, network traffic filtration, not routing. Then we have application gateway as well with web application firewall and smart load balancing. For data protection and encryption, we have Key Vault. We have encryption at rest through SSE or Azure Disk Encryption, TDE, transparent data encryption. In transit, it uses TLS and SSL. For threat protection, we have Azure Sentinel, which is security information and event management for intelligence security analysis, and also source system orchestration. And MS Defender, which is your cloud posture management and workload protection. Then we have something for our application security, like you could use Azure Bastion, or you could also utilize WAF and use all those tools for your DevOps pipelines. For compliance and governance, we have Azure Policies, Azure Blueprints, Azure Compliance Manager. For backup and DR, we have Azure Backups and ASR. And there are so many PaaS services which has inbuilt options for like failover groups in Azure SQL. Then Azure Monitor is a wonderful tool for monitoring, and Azure Log Analytics. It collects, analyze data generated by resources in your cloud. And for container security, we have Defender for a CR for registry for containers. We have features for securing AKS, including network policies, Azure AD integration, Azure policies, managed identities. For DevOps security, we have tools for integrating security-related components into your native Azure DevOps. All that tool like SonarQube, and there are so many other tools as well. We'll cover it in the DevOps pipeline. That's a video I'm preparing simultaneously. Then the connectivity, we should have VPN gateway, establishes secure and cross-premises connectivity, encrypted one. And ExpressRoute, it provides a private connection between Azure data center and infrastructure. So these are a few services I just wanted to add here, which most of them we covered during the conversation on design principles and checklist. But it is something that we should be aware of. So thank you for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.